guys, we are going to follow a process that's very similar to Reggie Laurent's. We're going to start on black paper with white paint. We're going to start by making a couple organic lines that bisect or move across the paper. So an example of an organic line would be one that's wavy, one with lumps and bumps. I'm kind of thinking about mountains. Once I have a few of those, I'm going to start to work in between and add some organic shapes. Remember, organic shapes are shapes without names. So this is kind of, it looks a little bit like a lumpy peanut to me, or a potato. So there's no name for that, right? So it's called organic. So I'm filling in with some larger organic shapes. When I'm finished with that, I'm going to go ahead and add smaller geometric shapes. So an example of a geometric shape is a triangle, a circle, a square. All of the shapes that we have names for, math shapes, are geometric. So I'm kind of following the line right there to unify my piece of art. When something feels unified, it means it feels whole, complete. Things don't look out of place. And to do that, a lot of times artists will repeat certain things. So for example, I repeated the curve of the line there. I'm repeating circles here. Again, I'm kind of following that curve to turn it into an organic shape and then filling. Maybe I'll add a triangle here to create unity because I added a triangle up there. I'll put a little square down here again to create unity. And maybe I'll even add a few small circles. When you get to this point, you're going to let your artwork dry. We are going to add color on top of these, just not today. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and add color on top. I want to keep parts of my white lines, so I don't want to cover it completely. So an example would be, I'm going to fill in this shape here. I'm leaving a little border around the edge so you can still see my white shape. So I'm leaving that white showing. When I'm ready to switch colors, like always, I'm rinsing in the paintbrush and then onto the sponge. When I do the lines, I might want to make a really thin line. I'm only going to cover up 1/2 of my line. I'm trying to let that white show in as kind of like a border. So I'm layering color. To make a thin line, it's really important that your paintbrush be a ballerina. So when I'm doing that, I'm on the tiptoes. These are the tiptoes of my paintbrush. So your paintbrush is like a ballerina. Ballerinas always dance on their tiptoes. They never ever scoot around on their bottoms because nobody wants to go to the booty scooting ballet. So you're gonna go ahead and work like that until each of your shapes and lines has a color. You can repeat colors. Maybe you'll come up with a color scheme and you will only use 4 or 5 colors, or maybe you'll use many, many colors. The choice is really yours, but you're layering right on top of your white. I'll time lapse you while I work on mine. Now I'm going to layer with pastels. My painting's still a little bit wet, so you'll notice that probably my paint will move around a bit as I'm working. Yours will be totally dry. So I'm gonna go right on top of the shapes and lines I made and add smaller shapes and lines. So an example would be all along this line, this pink line, I'm adding smaller lines. I can also mimic the shapes or lines. So for example, inside of this big orange shape, I'm gonna kind of trace where I'm making a smaller version of that shape, and then maybe I'll make little dots right down the center. And maybe I'll make little lines around it. So the more detail and little lines and shapes you can add, the better. So maybe here I will, well, this one looks fairly dry. I'll layer little triangles on top, opposite triangles. So one goes this way, one goes that way. And these are more geometric generally, unless you're kind of tracing one of your organic shapes. Maybe I'll add little dots inside of my triangle. And I'm gonna keep working like that until every single line or shape has something special or extra on top. And I can repeat things. We talked about unity before. Unity is when something feels united or the same. So in order to unify that, I'm making similar lines, but I'm doing them in a different color. Maybe here I'll make a teeny tiny triangle inside, so it almost looks like concentric shapes. Concentric means layered. I might do those lines again, this time in the same color. And then I'm even going to work in my negative space. My negative space is the space around, so the areas that are black. I'll do little stripes in here. Maybe I'll turn these into X's, just for something different. Last one, maybe I'll do cross hatching. That's where I make lines one way and then go ahead and layer over lines going the opposite way. And like I said before, then we're gonna work in our negative space, our space around our shapes, by filling. So I'm gonna fill this area with yellow. I can even take a white and make my white lines a little bit brighter and darker. That could really make things pop. Same here. And filling in until I'm happy with my work. Again, this is called the negative space, the space around. I'll time lapse you while I work on mine. Now my piece of art is finished. I filled in my negative space. I used organic shapes and geometric, and I created unity by repeating some elements like stripes, the type of angles or curves in my line, and overall, it's a really bright, colorful piece of art that I'm super excited about.